Hello everyone, this is Dr. Shijun Wang. Today's video I'm going to continue working on the Schubert Impromptus Opus 90 number 4. Last time we stopped around measure 47 and then I shared that story about how Rachmaninoff was playing this in a live concert and how one of the audience members was searching for the cellist, right? Because he thought the sound was so beautiful, it couldn't be from a percussion instrument piano, but it could be from a cello. And I really truly believe in that story. And we also said how Schubert was grouping these in 4 measure or 4 bar phrases. And then and you know, a very obvious evidence is that after 4 measures here, then the whole thing again in a higher octave for the right hand. And also one thing very, very important is how in order to connect this 4 bar phrasing, we don't want to cut it off every measure. We should not neglect the small note. We shouldn't play, but instead we should really emphasize, play that middle note very deep so that we can connect. Really similar examples we can find in a passionate. Right? So many people play, but when you sing do mi la, not do mi la, right? Here the same. All right, enough review. So from measures 47, we have these 4 measure grouping, but you see, after we go up for 1 octave, we have a 2 measure extra. So this is almost like you're trying to break through from this pattern. One more, 2 more. So I almost feel like it's triumphant when you get to this F major part. And here, this 1 more step up. That's the first climax. Here, this very beautiful melody, it doesn't come out of the blue. It's exactly the same melodic line. Yeah, so you can call this semantic transformation, right? The same motive, the same theme, but then this has a different feeling compared to this soprano singing. And also in triplet. And here, be really mindful of this octave leap, right? That's the first time we have this. And this is almost yan. In vocal music, it's called portamento. You almost just slide up, right? But then it takes a lot of time to slide. So then we should take the same similar amount of time to make it like singing. Okay, and then the later part really was very, very similar. Now we get to this middle section where it's, in C sharp minor. frightening part. The harmonic background, the harmonic progression, super easy. Yeah, 1-5, 1-5. But then with this C sharp minor, there are many challenges. One is that this melodic note, so, la, so, in the first measure, it's 1 against 26. Yeah, against 26. And you want this to be still there after you play 26 note below. So really, it has to be probably more than 40 times more. Okay, the tone is different. This is deep. You use the finger, not the fingertip, but then the flash. And here, there is a trick for playing these quiet and even. I talk about wrists all the time. I'm, in the front line for the piano teachers to say free the wrist, right? The wrist has to be free in order to play fast and relax and create even sound. But here, that's one of the few occasions where I say don't move your wrist. Here we have to use your forearm to make it even, because for wrist we simply do not have the time. Wrist is very handy when we try to put multiple single notes together, but wrist is slow when it moves in comparison to the forearm. So a lot of forearm, but very, very little movement. Still be mindful of the larger leaps. Here, of course, we play very quietly before the crescendo. Also, there is a switch of direction. Before was always going down, but here it's going up. Almost like the emotionally is out of control. Minor 5, minor dominant. Now the real dominant 7. Happens is that still Schubert is using this 4 measure group, but 4 goes up, 4 goes down. The range of this undulation of the melody is much bigger, right? It's bigger waves. Okay, so and he had it twice. And this is the single most beautiful moment, one of the most beautiful moments in the history of music. And why do I say that? Right, this is really simple technique and everybody does it. We changed from minor, which is quite nervous, and this is major, so serene. And I personally think that when Schubert was composing this, he was spiritually in heaven, in a much higher place, right? If you know a little bit about Schubert, right, that dude had the most miserable life in all dimensions. He was called Little Mushroom because he was short and not good looking. He was very, very poor, depend on the help of his friend. Yeah, they called him by a nickname, "Who's paying?" Right? He never had money, and a lot of the friends got arrested for some social movement. So he really had really struggling to feed himself, and he wasn't recognized as bigger of a high status as we consider him today, and he was suffering with syphilis. He had this incurable disease in a very, very young age. So and he was a orphan almost. So in every way he had suffered. He can hate the world. He can be so bitter. But no, while he's suffering physically on earth, his mind, his spirit is in a much higher place. I mean, if you are to ask me to name one or two composers who wrote the most beautiful melodies ever, it's probably Schubert or maybe Mozart. But I'm more leaning towards Schubert. So he wrote the most beautiful thing in the most miserable situation. Um, and if you know that after he was buried on the tomb, it says here the music buried the great treasure underneath, but even more importantly, more beautiful, much more beautiful hope is buried. So this is the hope. Yeah. Well, really, I get very emotional when I share this with my students and friends, how when I play Schubert, it's not just me playing a piece, but I'm worshiping this. And I'm sure this is really not from this worldly, this world, but this is from much higher power, from much higher spirit. And when I do this, I do it a little bit slower. Well, you might argue, is that allowed? Well, as a performer, and this is, of course, for the sake of doing it more beautifully, but also for the sake for myself to stay in this spot a little longer. This is hurry, but I try to enjoy every note without having a complete stop. Da 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 da. The leap of six is so beautiful. And then, and this is, you almost feel like he's trying to conquer the world, make it a more beautiful place. Now this utopian section finishes and we have to go back eventually. Yeah, go back to the rainy day in London. Well, I think I can finish this in 2 lessons, right? Because it's an ABA form, so what's coming after this middle section are exactly the same as the beginning, which we spent time talking about. And really, Schubert is one of my favorite composers. His music touched the deepest part of my heart, and I have this deep connection. And of course, I tell my students, it's because I have the same birthday as Schubert. And he was exactly 190 years older than me. But really, this insanely beautiful melodies, and the harmony is so simple, but really he was able to create something of a higher level. That every time I play, I'm not playing, I'm worshiping, I'm really enjoying myself during the time playing his music. Okay, well, next time we're going to move to number 3, another masterpiece. Very difficult technically, very easy harmonically, but I shall share my knowledge on playing the number 3 of the Opus 90 set next time. Thank you for watching. See you next time.